Hey guys, KyleAye here, bringing you guys SPL Draft Notes Season 2, Week number 7. The show about everything and everything SPL related. If you guys are excited for this week's show, be sure to drop a like on the video, as well as subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 5,000 subs by the end of the year, and I would really appreciate it if you help us out along in reaching that goal. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead, we could jump right into it and start looking at last week's games. First up, we have CBAD versus Pokeaimmd in a matchup where Diancie went crazy. Initially looking at the matchup, I didn't really notice the no rock resist, or I guess I did for Lycanroc, but not so much for an offensive Diancie, and it definitely showed up and showed out with that Trick Room Meteor Beam set, putting in a ton of work, grabbing Joey a 3-0 victory. Next up, we have Gator versus Leo in a game where Gator was able to take home a nice and convincing 5-0 victory against Leo with 5 kills from Iron Moth, really doing well in a matchup against two teams who are competing at a really high level this season. So it was really cool, potentially a playoff rematch, potentially a little sneak peek into said playoffs, and yeah, a really big win from Gator. Then we have Shady versus Shuckleking, a game where another Pokemon grabbing 5 kills and Azelf grabbing Shady the 4-0 victory. Now, he did get a pretty lucky crit on the Alamomola, but it was able to be positioned really well by Shady. Those mystical power boosts were going crazy. He was able to take home a nice 4-0 victory. Then we have Uzi versus Chimpact in this game where Uzi was able to take home a nice and comfortable 3-0 victory. Honestly, a team effort. Mons like Okidogi did well, Treads did well. Honestly, putting in a lot of work in a matchup where Chimpact just didn't have much for the solid core that Uzi was rocking, grabbing himself a nice 3-0 victory. Then we have Nexus versus Emvee in a game where Nexus pulled off a huge upset, grabbing a 1-0 victory on the back of Expert Belt Curum going crazy. Took a big gamble and bring Webs into the competitive Empoleon and Defiant Annihilate, but it ended up working out great for him as he was able to pick up, again, another Pokemon with 5 kills last week, grabbing himself a nice 1-0 victory against Emvee. Then we have Drewby versus KyleAye. Drewby, again, this is just a week of Mons getting 5 kills because Sandaconda grabbed 5 against Kyle here in a matchup where Iron Defense went crazy. And I cannot lie to you, as someone who watches way too much Draft League, plays way too much Draft League, I had no clue that Sandaconda got Iron Defense. I've seen Coil, and that's about it. I have never seen Iron Defense, so that was actually a really cool thing to see, and it ended up putting a ton of work, glaring things, Iron Defensing up, and body pressing through the squad. Definitely did really well here. And then lastly, we have Haydunn versus Playmore, where Playmore was able to take home a nice and comfortable 4-0 victory. Tar Heel starting to play really well through this later stretch of the season, hopefully grabbing Playmore a playoff spot. Last year, going crazy with 3, and the Metagross grabbing 2 kills as well, performing really well. That moves our pick'em season, our pick'em score on the season to 27-8. We are killing it this season. I cannot lie to you. We are picking them, and we are picking them well, which is definitely cool to see. But with that being said, we can kind of jump into the first matchup of the week. Our first matchup of week 7 we're going to go over is going to be CBAD versus Uzi. Now, from CBAD's side, again, I always harp on it, but the Sun offense is just insane here. Gouging Fire has no switch ins under the sun. It never does, right? But if we get up Sun, Mons like a Azumarill that you think 4 times resist you don't really want to take a Sun boosted Choice Band attack, or even a Dragon Dance boosted attack once you force Chip on it. Speaking of forcing Chip, Walking Wake does that. Really, the only consistent response to something like Walking Wake is going to be a Azumarill. So if we use these two Pokemon to break for each other, we can kind of decide in the builder if we want to break with Wake or if we want to break with Gouging, and if we want to win with the other, then we're going to be in a really good spot. On top of that, our other Sun Sweepers are great into the likes of Azumarill and the rest of the team. Venusaur is incredibly strong with dual stabs plus Earth Power. It's really strong here. Potentially some kind of growth set could definitely put in some work. Dragapult can take a hit at +2, but really, that's about it. And even then, you could rock out with Knockoff and have a mixed variant, which could do a ton of work in this matchup. So definitely very valid. And then Shiftry looks insane. I think that Terra Dark is ridiculously strong here. Terra Dark Knockoff plus Leaf Blade kind of just smokes the team outside of Okidogi. You could also go with Terra Flying, Terra Blast, and hit it hard from the physical side under the sun, which is really cool. So I think Shiftry looks really strong. I also really like Primarina in this matchup as a great pull check, but especially a great Chi-Yu check. I think Assault Vest looks really strong in this matchup in particular. And then Mamoswine is always going to be a powerful Pokemon, right? It's a great revenge killer to the likes of Pult. It hits a lot of things really hard. And is overall just a big general nuisance to the squad. Can be a potentially good rocker. Maybe a Sash Shed on lead could put in some work as well. Now, from Uzi's side, we talked about Dragapult before being able to live a hit from Venusaur. I also really like the idea of Scarf Pult. Outspeeding +1 gouging, +1 wake, outspeeding some sun variants and sweepers and things of the sort, and really being a big nuisance to this team. It's normal type Greedent, which I don't think is a great Pokemon here in general. And outside of that, you can kind of just click U-turn the entire game. Shadow Ball, you can be mixed with Dragon Darts, or you can drop a Draco pretty darn freely. And then you have Flamethrower as great coverage in order to hit things like Corviknight. You could also go Thunderbolt to hit the likes of Corviknight and Primarina in one attack. You know, very valid options for it. Definitely looks really strong here. I think that Chi-Yu Under the Sun also looks really powerful. Really, it's only the Primarina that switches in. Otherwise, we kind of click Dark Pulse, and if Sun is up, you come in, the Prim comes in and takes a Fire Blast or an Overheat or a Flamethrower to the face. It's not going to tickle. It's not going to feel very good at all. So that Pokemon looks really strong here. I think that Azumarill, excuse me. I am tired if you guys can't tell. Azumarill looks really powerful in this game in particular. Again, it's really important in checking that Walking Wake, and it can even take on some variants of Gouging. Again, you gotta be careful when that sun is up. Gouging can be really bulky and really obnoxious, but solid check to that guy. It's also a good Aqua Jet Revenger to the likes of things like Mamoswine and things of the sort. Also not easy to switch into for this team, to be completely honest. If that Venusaur comes in and catches a stray Ice Spinner, it's a bit unfortunate for that Venusaur because it's dying right there. I also really like Deoxys as a potential spiker. Also a potential Helmet Mon in the sense that you kind of force Gouging to knock itself out. You might not be able to switch into it well, but the combination of like Flare Blitz Recoil plus Rocky Helmet can be really solid and really annoying overall. However, overall, I am going to give this matchup to CBAD. I think that his Sun offense is so unbelievably strong here. There are definitely some outs for Uzi, but I am going to lean CBAD here in a very narrow victory. Next up, we have Playmore versus the Philadelphia Stunkies and Shuckleking. Now, from Playmore's side, when you talk about Playmore's team, you always got to talk Valiant. I think Valiant's really strong here. I really like the offensive coverage of Fighting plus Fairy versus this team. Really, the only check is going to be something like Bronzong, which isn't going to stick around for a long time. Plus, breaking down Bronzong is going to help out the rest of your offense a ton. Things like Garchomp, things like Metagross, things like Electro that we'll talk about later. Really appreciate that thing being worn down. Speaking of, Garchomp looks great. I think Scarf looks great. I think Band looks great. I think some kind of SD variant is okay in the sense that, like, you'll be able to break through the likes of Alamomola a little bit better, but you are kind of revenge fodder for things like Bax, Gren, and if you get super weakened, Vacuum Wave from Ursaluna. So it's just something to keep in mind at the very least. I could also see some kind of spiking variant doing pretty okay if you feel comfortable into it killing that Hatterene. Maybe like a Life Orb spike set could definitely do some work. I also really like Metagross. Metagross is always going to be strong. I think some kind of Shuckleberry variant could definitely do some work, and being probably your best answer to Bax, as well as potentially luring an Ursaluna with a random Grass Knot into it killing that guy. That could be really clutch for Playmore's side. I love Electrode as a Terra Captain. I think Terra Fairy is great here in being able to hit this entire team incredibly hard. Terra Fairy is great for the likes of Baxcalibur. And then outside of that, you kind of just Volt and Leaf Storm on everything else and do a ton of damage to the squad. And then I also really like Vaporeon. Vaporeon is going to be a great check to the likes of Ursaluna and Gren. And the combination of Scald and Alluring Voice is really solid. You can go Wish Protect, or you can even go Calm Mind in this matchup and do a ton of work. Now, from, not Playmore side, from the Philadelphia Stunky side, I love Greninja here. I think some kind of choice spec set can definitely do a lot of work. Dark Pulse plus Surface, really difficult for the opposing side to switch into. You also tech on Ice Beam to Oko the Garchomp, as well as hit the Chestnut really hard, or probably Oko the Chestnut to be completely honest. And then Water Shuriken is a great revenging tool for the likes of Valiant, for the likes of Garchomp, and for the likes of even guys like Scarf Crocodile and things of the sort. Baxcalibur is also incredibly strong. You can either go some kind of SD variant or maybe even a choice band variant. I really like SD though. I think SD, either Scale Shot or Glaive Rush, Ice Shard, and then Earthquake looks really powerful in this matchup. Really, you just kind of have to chip down that Metagross. You could also be up a Berry set to kind of take that thing on naturally. I also really like the idea of Air Balloon Haydunn or Miss Magius with Terra Fairy, either of which are really strong here. Haydunn is probably better defensively and, you know, prevents hazards from the Garchomp a little bit better, but Miss Magius looks really strong with a Terra Fairy plus Levitate, while in Garchomp stabs, as well as being really strong offensively. Look at the combination of Shadow Ball plus Dazzling Gleam into this team. It doesn't have great answers, especially for like a Nasty Plot variant to break through like Spadef Vaporeon. We'll do a lot of work with that Miss Magius, so definitely looks really strong overall. And then of course we have to mention Blood Moon. I mean, Blood Moon never has switch-ins, but in particular here it has no switch-ins. You could go a plethora of different items. You can go with a Rindo Berry to take a hit from Electrode. You can go with a Chople Berry to live a hit from the Valiant, which I think is probably a little bit more valuable. You go KyleAye, you go 4 attacks, you go 3 attacks Moonlight. It does so much damage here though, man. It is incredibly powerful. I also like the idea of like a KyleAye weakness policy set to really take advantage of the likes of Electrode plus Vaporeon. Definitely something you can do. Overall, I am going to lean the Philadelphia Stunkies in this matchup just because I do think that their top 3 offense is so strong and they have some solid pivots otherwise. Third, we have Emvee versus KyleAye in a pretty exciting matchup here. Now, from Emvee's side, I think that Terra Steel Flygon is going to be very important, particularly for that Excadrill. Now, if Excadrill is Mold Breaker, obviously we'll go through that and be able to hit with Earthquake. But if it is a Sand Sweeping set, which is the most scary here in my personal opinion, we really need that Terra Steel Flygon to slow that guy down because there is not much in the way of Earthquake plus Iron Head otherwise. And with our Levitate and our, you know, Steel typing, we'll be able to take on that thing really well. So I really like the idea of Terra Steel. It's also solid offensively. It checks things like Clefable, kind of flips that matchup on its head. And Ground plus Steel plus Dragon is pretty strong here, so potentially a DD3 attack set, potentially some kind of U-turn variant as well. Definitely looks pretty darn okay. I think Annihilate is also strong. I don't know about any kind of setup set. It seems a little bit slower, but a 4 attacks variant with either an Assault Vest, maybe a Pyappa Berry, maybe even a Roselli Berry for the Fairy type moves from the Clefable looks really strong in this matchup. The combination of dual stabs, plus potentially a random gunk shot for that Fable, is going to put us in a pretty darn good spot. You might even want some rock coverage for the Moltres, if at all possible. But it definitely looks very strong nonetheless. I also like Kleavor a ton in this matchup. Really the only answer is going to be something like Excadrill, which doesn't appreciate coming in, taking a Stone Axe, and drops to a Stray close combat. Otherwise, we kind of come in, just click Stone Axe and prosper. Stone Axe plus U-turn does a ton of damage overall, and is really strong. I also really like Bolt. Bolt's always going to be a strong Pokemon. It grabs solid Volt switches, gets out into other threats like on the team, things like Flygon, things like Annihilate, and is going to be very solid. And then lastly, of course, I gotta mention Empoleon. I think Empoleon, whether it be especially defensively, and it means to check the likes of Moltres, Clef, and Latios, whether it be a more offensive variant to pivot and take a hit and threaten offensively, it does look really powerful here. Potentially some kind of AV set, potentially a Wakan Berry set. It can really do a ton here. Even Shuckleberry makes a ton of sense here, so definitely like Empoleon. Now from Kyle's side, Excadrill, we already mentioned it, goes absolutely insane. I think Sand is very valid to go as that Sand Sweeper route, but even a Scarf Mold Breaker or just a Mold Breaker SD Rapid Sin set goes absolutely wild. The ground resist on this team is Tentacruel. It is Toadcruel. I'm sorry, it's not Tentacruel. That's not a thing, right? So it looks really powerful here. Latios looks incredibly strong in this matchup. Really, it's just the Empoleon that can kind of soft check it. Outside of that, once that Empo gets chipped down, we just click Luster Purge and Draco Meteor or Psychic if you don't want to worry about, you know, proccing that Empoleon's Defiant or competitive too often. It definitely looks really good here in this matchup. I think Clefable is going to be a solid defensive pivot and a ton. It checks the Bolt really well, which is kind of scary otherwise. Again, we want to take as much defensive pressure off of Excadrill as humanly possible. And then Moltres also looks really strong here. I love it offensively into this squad. Overall, I am going to lean Emvee in this matchup. I think that if he can play offensively enough with the likes of Flygon and Weavile, which we didn't mention, oopsie, and guys like Annihilate, Empoleon, Kleavor, things like that, I think he can edge this one out. But if Kyle really leans into the Sand option, he might be able to snag one. Next up, we have Gator versus Shady, and a really fun one that I'm really excited to watch personally. Both of these coaches have been having a phenomenal season up to this point. From Gator's side, Gholdengo goes crazy, whether it be a choice spec set, a choice scarf set, or potentially a set with a resist berry for the Sneasler, either Colbert or Cassim. It does really well in this matchup. The combination of Shadow Ball plus Make It Rain has no answers. Excuse me, sorry. But it does really well in this matchup, especially with spike support, which are assuming Samurott can provide with ease. These two Pokemon in general together do incredible here, right? Especially because I think the Rotom's going to be more Spadef, right? The check to this is probably going to be something Serena. And if Serena is trying to rapid spin when the Gholdengo exists, it's going to have a tough time, right? And then we get into Gholdengo, now we get an attack off with spikes up, and that is not going to be good for Shady's team at all. If you look at an endgame scenario too, if my Gholdengo is forcing a ton of damage on the likes of especially defensive Rotom and the rest of the team, my Iron Moth can come in and absolutely clean up this game later on with a booster speed variant and do a ton of damage and put in a ton of work overall in the matchup. I really like his dual stabs. I mean, they're, I think, unresistant on the team, right? There's nothing that takes on both. Nope, not at all. I'm realizing I don't know why there's Gholdengos on the thingy or gimme ghouls. Sorry, I just now realized that as I'm recording this. There must have been some kind of error in the graphics making process, but oh well, it's all good. They look cool. They're cool little guys. So I'm not really 100% sure why they're there. But regardless, Iron Moth does great. Keldeo also does phenomenally in this game. Again, we just kind of overload with special offense in this game with our spikes up, and we're going to put in a ton of work. Keldeo is ridiculously strong here, depending on which stab option it wants to click. And then Donphan is also great. I like Donphan because it's going to function as a solid check to something like Sneasler if we go a more offensive Gholdengo. It's also going to function as a solid physically defensive check to something like Landers if we're rocking an Ice Spinner. It's a great Rapid Spinner, as well as it can potentially rock up here and get up more and more hazards. Now, from Shady's side, I think if you can chip down the Gholdengo and the Donphan, force them in a lot, something like Sneasler can put in a ton of work in an endgame scenario, hopefully SDing up and doing a ton of work. I also really like Landers. I think this might be the first time we see a more offensive Landers matchup. Scarf looks really strong. The ground resistance on this team are Whimsicott and Zarude. Zarude gets blown up by a U-turn. Whimsicott is not bulky and also is a Terramon. The moment it tears, that resistance is lost, right? So I think a potential Scarf Landers does a ton of work here. AV is also kind of valid as a Moth pivot and check, as well as Pokemon that can live a hit from Gholdengo, a little bit easier pivot into that thing. More of an offensive sponge, I guess, is what that would function as, but definitely looks decently strong for sure. I also love our Chaladon. I think our Chaladon is really strong offensively in this game. I think you'd probably go with some kind of Chople variant. Definitely makes a lot of sense. Or again, AV makes sense too. So definitely a really strong Pokemon overall. And then I think Serena is needed. I think you want a physically defensive Serena that's going to check something like Samurott, try and get some spins off, knock off some Gholdengos. You have to probably play a little aggressive with it, and really be smart if you want to get a late game spin off to get those hazards away. But regardless, it is valuable in its own right in checking both the Samurott and the Zarude if it ends up coming. Overall, though, I am going to give this matchup to Gator. I think that his special offense plus Samurott is just a little too overwhelming for Shady to deal with in this matchup. But again, another really fun and close one. Alrighty, next up we have Nexus versus Drewby. Now, from Nexus's side, holy Curum. We saw it get 5 kills last week, right? And I mean, look at it this week. What takes on the combination of like Ice Beam, Freeze Dry, and Earth Power? Nothing. Spadef Probopass might be able to take it when it tears, but that's it. I genuinely could not tell you what switches in. Now, it's going to have a little bit of trouble in the speed game in this matchup. I think you have two options here. I think you can potentially go a Chople Berry to take on a hit from the Dual Fighting Core, or I think you could potentially go a Choice Scarf variant. It's a little bit harder to lock, so I think I'd probably lean Chople, but Scarf is very valid in my opinion here. Now, outside of that as well, I think Talonflame is incredibly valuable in this matchup. That priority Brave Bird or Hurricane off the Gillings into something like a Weakened Boulder, Quackleval, Rillaboom, Infernape, and even something like a nuisance, being a nuisance to something like a Weezing, right? And forcing Chip on that is going to be really valuable. I personally like Special a lot. It's a little bit more risky, obviously having to hit Hurricanes, but I like having multiple options or opportunities to get off that priority boosted Gale Wings, action. I think that Jirachi is also great here. I originally was looking at like Meteor Beam. I think Meteor Beam could put in a ton of work, force a ton of damage on that Skuntank, which could help out something like an Amorous and Meowscarada. But I also really think you need Shuckleberry in this matchup, man. I think that Boulder is a big threat into this team, and having something that can guarantee to take a hit at +2 is very valuable. It's still really strong offensively, and you could definitely go like a, Calm Mind variant potentially with a Shuckleberry. But regardless, I do think you want something that can take a hit from that thing once it starts getting boosted up. If we look at something like an Amorous as well, it also has absolutely no switch-ins at all on this team. Again, Weezing is not known for its special defense and is a psychic away from getting blown up. Outside of that, we have the likes of Probopass, again, gets blown up by an Earth Power, and Skuntank, which doesn't actually resist Fairy. So I think the combination of Kyurem plus an Amorous is really strong. You can go Scarf on one, non-choice on the other, or you could even go double Scarf on these guys and put in a lot of work, in my opinion. So I really do like Enam a ton here. And then lastly, I think that Web is a very valid option. We talked about the speed issue with something like Kyurem, and even an Amorous. Getting up webs would be really valuable and really help this team out in controlling the offensive momentum and tempo. Now, from Drewby's side, we have the mighty, I just called him the move, the Iron Boulder. That guy goes absolutely insane. Really, you just need to chip down Jirachi or get rid of it, and then at +2 you win. That's it. Like, the game's over. Maybe a physically defensive Blastoise needs to be chipped down as well, but again, that's it. That is all that needs to happen, is we need to whittle those guys down, and we're going to be in a great spot. And Fernape also looks really strong offensively. Some kind of Life Orb variant, some kind of non-choice variant, or even a Scarf set does really well in this matchup. Really, the only thing that takes on your dual stab is going to be something like Talonflame, which does not want to come in and either take a Rock move or lose its Gale Wings. Again, that's bad for Nexus to have to waste it there, right? So definitely like Infernape a ton in this game. I also like Quacklefall a lot here. I think a potential Scarf variant could also do a lot of work. Aqua Step endgame seems pretty likely, something like Blastoise and Meowscarada are removed. But you can also just kind of click Close Combat in the game. You can click Ice Spinner. You can do a ton of different things in this matchup. Overall, though, I am going to lean Nexus. I think really outside of those three offensively, Drewby's team kind of struggles, and a lot of his defensive core is very easily chippable from Nexus's side. Things like Probopass, Skuntank, Weezing, the likes of those guys aren't the sturdiest things in the world, and I don't think this is the best Sandaconda matchup. So we're going to lean Nexus here, and yeah. Oh, of course, I have to mention, I stopped the recording for that portion, but I forgot. Right after this, we can kind of talk about this matchup with the man himself, NumbNexus. We are going to jump into a quick interview with him, ask him what he thinks on the matchup, and just talk about his season overall. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into that interview. Alrighty guys, here we are with the interview. We're here with the man himself, Nexus. Do you want to say hi, bro?
Was goody.
Alrighty, now, this is obviously, we're getting pretty late in the SPL season. We're heading into the final weeks, final 2 weeks. I wanted to ask you, same question I've kind of started out asking everybody, because it's my personal favorite question is, has there been any like standout members this season on the team? Anybody who's either surprised you, has been really fun in the builder, or has surprised you in the games themselves, or anything like that?
Well, like on my squad, I'm not gonna lie to you, pro. Like, okay, there's pros and cons. Pros, Kyurem. I'm glazing this mon. I can never lose this mon. I don't even care about Valiant anymore. This mod is basically Dragon Valiant. I love this mod. This mod is incredible. Like, it's just, I love it. I love it. But disappointed, bro. Enamorous. It's on Fraud Watch. Like, it's not like they hit me once and I'm dead. The thing is paper frail, and it's like I have to run the weirdest builds to make this thing do something. And then it's like, would I rather Enamorous or Kyurem? And definitely Kyurem. So it's like, I don't know, man. I would have rather Azumarill. I don't know.
Enam has like this weird kind of feeling where it feels like when you can't run that Terra on it, you can't boost those fairy moves, or you can't Stellar Terra and get those contrary boosts. Yes. It feels like it just misses on KOs and 2-hit KOs a lot of time, like those small break points. And it's something I always mention too whenever I'm like looking at your matchups and stuff like that. Enam and Kyurem, I feel like they have a lot of overlap in matchups as that like strong special breaker, and especially with Kyurem like losing Roost this gen, I feel like a lot of times you're running more offensive variants, stuff like that, opposed to the past where you'd run like Boots with Roost and shit like that. So now, like, do I want to run Scarf Kyurem or do I want to run Scarf Enam, and do I want to waste a team slot on both when one can do well? So
really? Yes.
I think that is definitely fair. It is interesting though to hear you say You fuck Valiant. I'm a big Kyurem guy. Friendship ended with Valiant. Kyurem's my best friend now. That kind of leads into the next question. As you're the Valiant guy, first 3 gens or first 3 drafts of the gen. Sorry, snagging
drafts,
it. And Playmore finally ended it. Now I want to say, obviously this isn't Kyurem, which is kind of the mob we just compared it to. But how would you say your round 1 pick of Meowscarada has stacked up against your perennial round 1 pick in Iron Valiant?
Well, I'll be honest. I'll be so completely honest. And this is like, now that I'm Valiantless, I really see the power of that mon. Like I mean, him got cozy. I was in the rear view, bro. Meowscarada is crazy. I think this mon, I would argue, top 10 in draft free. This thing is crazy. This thing is a life-changing, game-changing mon. Because Valiant, I'm like, all right, cool. I can boost specs, fizz mixed. You know what I mean? Like even like a supporty mixed one. Dude, this cat. Dude, Valiant can't put up hazards. This cat has hazards. Like, and I got Axel. There's like no way I picked it up when I got Axel, dude. Like, so it's like, it's in a way I feel privileged because I picked it up when I got Axel. But if I don't get it again, which I do want to get it again, so I'd have to face somebody else with Axel. And I'm like, this mod is really hard, like, to wall. It gets all these weird moves, power gem, like triple Axel.
A ton of different tech options. Oh, 100%.
It's like crazy. And like the game I faced with Emvee, I had a bulky one where I lived moves. I was like, dude, this thing is, dude, it's the Dwight Howard of draft, bro. I don't know. Like, this thing is crazy, man. Like, I love it. I think Cat is incredible, but Valiant is just sadly just better. I can't say it's better than Pult. I can't. I think Pult is uncontested. I think it's too damn fast, but Valiant is like, that mod is dumb. That's a dumb mod, dude. Like, who allowed this mod to be real?
It's the Gen 9, everything's hyper min-maxed, where it's strong and it's fast and it's nothing else, but it doesn't really need to be anything else, you know, when you have 115 plus speed and crazy attacks. But Meowscarada I thought was super crazy because I remember everybody being super jacked. Big Weavile got triple Axel back, but then Meowscarada came and just like stole his job. Like he absolutely just kind of again, Weavile is still great, and the draft is cool, right? Because Weavile can chill on, I forget whose team it's on. It's on Emvee's team, and it could do well there because only one Weavile per league, only one Meowscarada. But like, if you look at it, you're like, oh damn, Weavile got Axel back, but Meow gets Axel and Knock and Stab Grass and Spikes and U-turn and like, taunt. Like it really does do a lot. So it's definitely a super, super versatile mod. I was kind of I wouldn't say a Meowscarada hater. I think I definitely felt it was overvalued. Like when I first saw it getting when it first saw it getting Axel, but I have been put onto it a little bit more, man. Especially when I'm in my own games, man. When I have to play a Meowscarada, it's one of those mons you kind of just have to Rocky Helmet and pray and chip it down a little bit and pressure it down. So I think that is definitely valid. Now, going to the next question. Week 7, you have a really, really fun matchup into Drewby, and this is like a really, really big matchup for playoff implications. I mean, these next 2 weeks are going to be pretty darn crazy in general. Can you give us any insight into your building process this week, how you approach the matchup, maybe some, insights to what you might be bringing here?
Well, I'll be honest, Drew. He sniped me. I'll be completely honest. He sniped me because I was like, if I lost Valiant, I'm gonna get Iron Boulder. This mod is faster, it's bulkier, it's cooler. Like I'm gonna get it. It's not cooler. I lied, but it's like tough. You know what I mean? So I was like, all right, I'm gonna get this, and he gets it. He gets it. So I really want to beat him. 1, because he has a boss diff, which I've been standing as a boss diff. I gotta get it for that. 2. It's, again, like you said, a really important game. I cannot afford to lose this after the win I just got off Emvee. I cannot afford to lose this game. I'll be completely honest, dude. I think Anamorous looks stupid into his team. As I was talking earlier, all that smack on Anamorous, I think it looks really good into his team. And honestly, Kyurem, I can't find a Kyurem switch. Like I can't. He doesn't own one. He does not.
Not at all. When we were looking at the matchup right before this on the video, I think we saw the only consistent answer to both Enam and Kyurem would be like a Spadef Terra Probopass, which isn't the most reliable thing in the world. I mean, Broken Terra, which is cool, but he is still, unfortunately, a Probopass at the end of the day. So I really like the idea of potentially like overloading with both of those guys on the squad. I mean, Probo can only come in and check one of them for so long before one of them can kind of just take over and run away with the game. So I think that is definitely fair. It is interesting though to see the Boulder snipe, especially because it looks really, really good into you. So it definitely is a big threat into the squad. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, talking SPL, we're talking about you played Drewby this week. This roster has been insane, right? One of the best draft league rosters I think ever when it comes to like YouTube viewing experience and all that good stuff. And you've had some really sick matchups. You just played Emvee last week, and you've played some people this season and prior seasons in SPL that have been really cool. Now, is there anybody in the league that you didn't get the chance to play in regular season or week 8, or that you just really want to play that you either want to run back against or something you haven't gotten to play against in a while in a future season?
Yeah, dude, I wanted to play Shady. I haven't played Shady in forever. You know what I mean? Like we've done a few like then we fights, but like that's like not, it's like not the same. There's so much passion and like just straight big dick gaming on the line here.
Oh, for sure.
And it's like we can't even experience that. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're like, I think 2 of the oldest draft league players that aren't like I think John, who isn't playing, it's Tara who's playing, and like the creator Steve, you know what I mean? So it's like we're like super big OGs here, and I wanted to face them, and I can't face them unless I make playoffs, which I'm like full invested, dude. I'm betting all my chips that kid's getting to playoffs, dude. That kid is getting into playoffs.
Oh, so he's been playing super well, which is really insane.
Exciting. Yeah, he just clicks the button. So I'm just like, wow, dude, like, wow. So I really wanted to face him. I really did. And I wanted to face Haydunn. I wanted to face Haydunn as well, too. The 2 people I wanted to face, I don't get a chance to face.
No, again, that definitely and I like the point of like, yeah, you could play your friends casually, whether it be in, you know, the videos you guys make, or even just, you know, running rambouts with your friend when you're chilling with them and calling stuff like that. But preparing to play someone in a draft league game, I mean, as someone who has like an athletic background and plays sports, it feels the same, man. It feels like you're getting ready, you know, for a really important sports game, and you're, you know, hyping yourself up. I mean, I get nervous. I'll be at work in the morning and I'll have a game after work, and I'll be going over the sequences in my head, tripping on it, super stressed out over the video game. Yes. It's really cool how much, you know, draft kind of gets you into that, you know, competitive spirit mode. So, and especially when you're playing against your friends too. Oh my gosh, it is one of the coolest feelings. So that is definitely super fair. Now, do you have any final words for the people, just in general on the interview before you know, we head off?
Yeah, I'm gonna do my absolute damnedest to make it to the playoffs. I feel like the curse is true. People have this theory saying that if I don't get Valiant, I play much better. It's true. This is the best season I've played in the last like BBR, PPL, like SPL season 1. Like, this is the best I've played. I feel like the rust is gone now. I'm still, that Leo game still keeps me awake at night to this day.
That was a rough one.
That was rigged. Like, we actually watched, like, it's like at the NFL. Like, this is real rigging that we watched.
They got the script. They didn't pass it to you beforehand, which is a little messed up. They should at least let you know.
Literally. But I mean, I'm gonna do my most to make it a playoffs, because I feel like everybody wants to see me make it a playoffs, and everybody's full invested. Everyone's full investing. I want to make it the playoffs for the peeps, for myself. I want to do it, and it's gonna be really hard because the universe doesn't want me to, but I'm trying. So that's how much that.
There you go. Well, I appreciate you coming on with me today, bro. Good luck in the game, and yeah, I'll catch you later.
See you, Brown.
Alrighty, our next matchup and second to last one is going to be Joey versus Haydunn. Now, from Joey's side, I really like Cinderace. I think offensively it looks really strong. Something that Haydunn needs to watch out for is a potential mixed variant with Electro Ball, because I can absolutely blow up a Gyarados and really open up the rest of the team to just kind of get smoked by a Pyro Ball and have a ton of damage done to it. I really like Lycanroc as well. There isn't reliable rock resist on this team. Really, it's just Hitmontop, and I don't think Hitmontop is great in the matchup, and even then, you catch that thing with a Psychic Fangs or a Play Rough, it's gonna get smoked and take a ton of damage here, so that's something to keep in mind. I also really like Diancie here. I think Diancie looks great. It is probably as good of a Darkrai check as you are ever going to get in Draft League. You check it really well, you spike in his face, and you get up a ton of hazards to put a ton of pressure on this team. Scizor in the endgame looks great. I think a potential SD variant with close combat can really put in a lot of work, especially if something like Lycanroc can put in some work in chipping down the rest of the squad, catching that Guju with a close combat, maybe popping a Chople Berry, and kind of setting up for a Scizor endgame potentially. And then, of course, I have to mention it. It's something that we've noticed throughout this season, that the ice resists on Haydunn's team are not great. It's really just that pre-Terra Bear Tick. And because of that, we have to mention that there is a possibility for Dewgong to do some work in this matchup. It can definitely come and be very, very obnoxious for him to deal with, whether it be an offensive set, whether it be an Assault Vest variant set, whether it be just a Boots 4 attack set. Could definitely put in a lot of work. Now, from Haydunn's side, I think your best bet with something like Darkrai into the Diancie matchup is either going to be Choice Specs and try and catch it with a Sludge Bomb, get a Poison. From there, you can kind of Dark Pulse through the team. It actually does really, really well. Or a potential Hypnosis set, putting something like Diancie to sleep, Hisuian Quillfish, which is also a solid check to it, to sleep, making them check that Bad Dreams chip, and kind of eliminating them from the game for at least a couple turns is potentially very, very valuable. I think that Gliscor is going to be really solid from the physically defensive side, checking things like Cinderace, checking things like Lycanroc, even soft checking things like Scizor, and actually just hardballing Thundurus no matter what. Unless there is snow up, and we set up snow for the Thundurus, it's not going to be able to weather ball through you. So that's something to keep in mind, obviously. Now, speaking of snow, I do think it's a valid option, right? I think that Glowking sets up snow for Beartic potentially really well for a Terra Electric set to do a lot of work in this matchup. We get rid of that Bullet Punch weakness as well and turn it into a resist, which is great. And lastly, I think that Hisuian Goodra can also put in a ton of work and is really, really strong offensively. I think that Specs is like a nuke into this team, but I really like Choppleberry personally. I like being able to take a close combat from the likes of Lycanroc. I like being able to take close combat from the likes of Scizor, and high jump kick / low kick from the Cinderace. All very valuable things. Oh. I mean, and even the Thundurus, Focus Blast. I think Chopple is probably your best bet on that guy. Overall, I am going to lean Joey in this matchup. I think that Haydunn has some cool offensive pieces, but he has to play very aggressively and very offensively to ever have a chance in this matchup with all this priority and scary offense coming his way. For our last matchup of the day, we have Chimpact versus 6-Foot Hacks, aka Leo. Now, from Chimp's side, I think that Ogerpump Wellspring is probably your most consistently solid offensive Pokemon. I think the combination of Ivy Cudgel plus Woodhammer / Hornleech and then just U-Turn is going to be really, really solid and, really whittling down the opposing side. I think that Spikes on it are also really, really great, right? It's something like Overcoil that can kind of soft check and pivot in. Something like Appleton that can soft check and pivot in. But if we get up Spikes on the switches, punish them, and then start U-turning around, we're really going to open up the game for the rest of the squad. I think that Tornadus is actually really good offensively outside of the one great check in Zapdos. If Zapdos can be lured in and eliminated in some way, shape, and form, I think an offensive Torn can put in a lot of work. I think that Assault Vest Hands is also really, really solid here. It soft checks a lot of the physical offense, mostly just that Ogerpon, I guess, but it's also going to be a great pivot into things like Bundle, great pivot into things like defensive Zapdos, and even a boosted Manaphy are not going to want to take on Iron Hands when it's wearing that AV, so I think that's a really valid option. I think that Hisuian Arcanine can force a ton of progress, right? The only check is going to be something like that Great Tusk. We force that thing in consistently, make it take Flare Blitzes. We're going to be in a good spot. You could even potentially be crazy and catch it with a Wisp and put yourself in a pretty great spot, so all things to keep in mind. And then I think that Reverum has some great win potential in this matchup. I think a Shift Gear set can put in a ton of work. It's another Pokemon that can kind of learn that Zapdos. You hit it with a +1 gunk shot, and all of a sudden your Nasty Plot Torn looks really, really threatening. So I really, really do like Reverum a lot here. And Scream Tail provides great utility. I think some kind of like Wish T-Waving set can be great, either as a bundle check or as a Great Test check. You kind of have to pick which one you want to check, but you can definitely check them, and you can encore stuff, lock things into setup, or, passive status in recovery moves. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. Now, from Leo's side, I think Great Tusk is incredible. Both offensively, it's very, very scary. It always is. But defensively, it checks so much physical offense. It checks Iron Hands. It checks Physical Dragonite. It checks Tinglu. It checks Arcanine. It checks the Reverum. It does so darn much here. So definitely a really strong Pokemon. I think that Bundle grabs great flip turns in this game, especially if you can get hazards up on your own side from something like Overquill. Spikes up plus Overquill flip turning really puts everything in range of that, or not Overquill flip turning, Bundle flip turning really puts everything in range of said Bundle and lets it break for itself really darn well. Zapdos also checks like a half the team really darn well. It checks pretty much everything that Tusk doesn't check. Things like Special D-Knight, things like Torn, all really do get stuffed by it. So definitely a solid Pokemon overall. And then I love Overquill Spikes. I think Overquill Spikes are going to be really, really valuable. We kind of talked about it a little bit with the bundle.
But Overcoil spikes, plus like Uxie getting up rocks and neutering around, and then Ogerpon Hearthflame coming in and doing ridiculous amounts of damage with those spikes and rocks up, maybe knocking off some boots, you're gonna be in a good spot overall. Overall, I am going to lean Leo in this matchup. I think that the combination of Tusk, Ogerpon, Iron Bundle, and Zapdos is so difficult for Chimpact to deal with in this matchup, and despite him having such a great team and having a great season, I am going to lean Leo here in this matchup, and that is going to be the end of Draft Notes week number 7. Again, I appreciate you guys kind of bearing with me as this went up late this week. I didn't get my graphics until the day of usual upload, so I can't really record or edit or anything like that. So no big deal though. You know, life happens, and we were able to get it done and get it out to you guys. So I hope you guys enjoy. Hope you guys are excited for the games to go up tomorrow, and I'll see you next week with week number 8. Later.